Hello everybody, so thank you for joining me today, and in today's video we're going to be looking at how to get the most out of GP placements. So the medicine guide has several videos in the series. So other videos include how to be successful during the pre-clinical years at medical school, how to be successful during your clinical years at medical school, how to get the most out of hospital placements, and how to succeed in your clinical OSCEs. So if you enjoy my video today, if you've enjoyed my previous videos, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please share this video with all of your friends, and let's get started. So the way that I've structured out this video is that I'm going to be giving you tips on what you should do before your GP placement, tips for what to do during your GP placement, and what to do after you've finished one day at GP and you've still got the rest of your placement to do. Okay, so before beginning the GP placement, so a few weeks prior to beginning your GP block, the medical school will inform you of where you've been placed. So the most important thing to do prior to beginning your GP placement is to just brush up on your history taking skills. Make sure that you're comfortable with taking the different types of histories. So if you're a little bit unsure of how to take paediatric history, for example, just make sure that you've read it over the day before, just so you're a little bit familiar, because one of the benefits of GP is that similar to A&E, you will never know who is going to walk through the door, so you don't know if it will be a child that will come in and visit you, or whether it's an elderly woman. So it's important that you're comfortable with all the different types of history taking, and that's something that I would recommend that you brush up on before you begin your GP placement. Also brush up on your clinical examination skills. Like I said, you don't know who's going to walk through the door. You don't know if they will have some sort of neurological problem and you'll have to perform a lower limb examination, the dreaded lower limb examination. So just make sure that you're comfortable with all of the clinical examinations that you've done so far. And this might sound a bit strange, but it's important, I think, to research the GP practice that you're going to and also the local area. So what specialist services do they offer? For instance, when I had my GP rotation in my 4th year, the GP that I was working with had a specialist interest in paediatrics and obs and gynae. So every Wednesday afternoon she would run the NIPE clinic. So this is the 6 to 8 week postnatal check for both mum and baby. So it was a great opportunity for me to become familiar with the NIPE examination prior to starting paediatrics. And also it's important because the NIPE examination is something that could crop up quite easily during an OSCE, or it might crop up in the written examination. And also when you're working as an F1, F2, you will probably be expected to complete the NIPE examination. So I think that's why it's important to be familiar with the specialist services that a GP offers, and also if you ask the GP to make sure that you're involved when those clinics are running, and also just to read up and brush up on those topics beforehand, just so you can get the maximum reward from attending that clinic. And another thing to consider is, do they have any routine clinics? So routine clinics will be things like diabetes clinics, blood pressure management clinics, and cervical smear clinics, because again, this offers opportunities for you to brush up and really polish up on any potentially OSCE stations and OSCE skills. So in terms of the blood pressure clinic, if they do run it, it's important for you as a medical student, because management of blood pressure is something that is expected of medical students, and it's something that will most definitely crop up in your exam. And also you can perform the blood pressure electronically using the machine, and you could also offer to practice taking the blood pressure manually, because again, that's something that could potentially crop up in your final OSCE exam, so it's better that you're comfortable and you're familiar with how to perform those procedures now. And with the cervical smears, it gives you an opportunity to practice speculum examinations. And performing speculum examinations, because of the nature of the examination, it's quite an intimate examination, and there are very rare or limited opportunities to perform a speculum examination. So if you have the opportunity to be involved in the cervical smear clinic, and after gaining the consent of the patient and with the chaperone present, if you feel comfortable to, then I would encourage you to perform the speculum examination and just become more familiar with it, because you will most definitely have an OSCE in it at some point. And finally, are there any schools or elderly residential care homes nearby? If there are, then more likely than not you will have quite a few paediatric patients visiting you at the GP practice and geriatric patients visiting you. And again, this will help you in terms of prepping for your GP rotation, so making sure that you're comfortable with taking a paediatrics history, making sure that you're comfortable with interpreting growth charts, and that you're comfortable with taking a history involving falls, and being aware of polypharmacy, especially in the geriatric population, and just making sure that you've brushed up on those skills, just so you're able to hit the ground running when you start your GP placement. So during your GP placement, so in the first few days, I imagine you'll be given the opportunity to shadow the GP, and then a few days afterwards, then you'll be given the opportunity to take your own patient histories and examinations and then relay that back to the doctor. But whilst you're shadowing the GP, it's quite easy just to sit in the corner of the room and be a passive listener, but that's not what you want to do. You want to be an active listener, and what I would suggest that you pay particular attention to involves drug counselling. So whenever the GP is counselling the patient about a new medication, so potentially it might be discussing the side effects, discussing how to monitor the medication, when the patient needs to return back for any medication reviews or to monitor the drug, then that's something that you should pay attention to, because it's quite easy for the medical school to create an OSCE station where you have to counsel a patient about a certain type of medication. Okay. Also contraception counselling, so again I think this is quite high yield in any obs and gynae history, obs and gynae OSCE stations. So again, be mindful of how the GP is explaining to the patient about the side effects, the indications, and also just general information about contraception, because again, like I said, that's quite high yield for an obs and gynae OSCE station. And also, this may sound a little bit strange, but online clinical questionnaires. So if a patient presents to the GP and the GP has a suspicion that from the history and the examination findings that this patient may be suffering from an alcohol addiction or maybe an alcoholic, then they would perform the CAGE questionnaire, and this is performed online. Also, if a patient presents and the GP is concerned that they may be suffering from depression, they would perform the PHQ-9 questionnaire, the patient health questionnaire. So it's important to be familiar with the different types of clinical questionnaires, because this is something that can quite easily crop up in your knowledge exams. They might have the PHQ-9 questionnaire as an exam question, and it will have a list of options for you to tick which one of the diseases it's used to identify. So it's important to be aware of the clinical examinations. Also, it's important that you practice the clinical examinations, and Personally, I think GP is a really good place to do it, because you'll have a different patient hopefully coming in every 15-20 minutes. You'll have to perform a different examination, so it will force you to brush up on that dreaded lower limb neurological exam, and it will force you to brush up on ENT examination, how to do a respiratory examination. All these different examinations will most likely crop up at some point in your GP rotation, so it's important that you're comfortable with it. And also, if you've got the GP watching you, then they'll be able to give you constructive feedback, and that's quite invaluable, because you don't always have the luxury of having someone watch you perform an examination and give you constructive feedback necessarily always. So I think it's a really good opportunity to do so in GP. And finally, like I said before, improve history taking skills. You don't know who's going to walk through the door, so it will force you to brush up on taking histories. Okay, so this is after the GP placement. So research any new conditions that you saw at the GP practice. Also consolidate your knowledge, so if you've had a case of tonsillitis and you remember writing in your notes about tonsillitis a few weeks ago but you don't remember the exact details, then it will be a really good opportunity when you get home to just cast your eyes through your notes again, just to help you become a bit more familiar. And because you've seen a case of tonsillitis earlier on that day, that will really help to consolidate and reinforce your learning. And also reflect on areas that you need to improve on. So if you've taken a history today of a patient who is considering taking HRT and you found that you didn't feel particularly comfortable talking about HRT, you felt a little bit slightly out of your depth, then that suggests that it would be a good idea for you to brush up on HRT. So really reflect on areas that you weren't entirely comfortable on GP, and take that opportunity to go home and make a positive improvement to your learning. So these are references, and this is the message that I want to leave you with today. So an ounce of practice is generally worth more than a ton of theory. So personally, I really enjoyed my GP rotation, and I feel that it's one of the very few areas in medical school where you can really sort of practice and refine the art of medicine, because in GP you've got different people who are presenting with different conditions. It's forcing you to brush up on all the different areas of medicine, both in terms of history taking and the clinical examination. So you're really perfecting your skills and your talent really at performing a wide range of examinations. So that's what I think is really amazing about GP as a medical student. If you've enjoyed my video today and you've enjoyed my previous videos, then please like my video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and share my video with your friends. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed your GP rotation as much as I did. Thank you very much.